He was just a boy from a poor neighborhood. His clothes were always a little too small, and his shoes had worn-out soles. But he never complained. Every morning before school, he helped his mother carry vegetables to the stall near the market. And after school, he ran small errands, washed cars, or carried bags for people, just to earn a little more. He didn't have toys, he didn't have video games, but what he had was something no one could see, a deep love for music. Whenever he passed by the music store in town, he stopped and stared through the window. Inside, there were shiny instruments lined up, guitars, drums, violins. But what always caught his eyes was the big black piano near the back. He had never touched one in real life. Still, he believed one day he would. At the local library, where entry was free, he sat for hours after his shift. There were a few old computers there. He watched videos of people playing the piano. Sometimes they played soft, slow tunes. Sometimes they played fast, joyful ones. The way their fingers moved on the keys, it was like magic to him. He watched closely, memorizing every finger movement, every note, every pause. And then he'd go home where he had made a pretend piano from cardboard. He drew the keys with a marker. He couldn't hear the music, but he could feel it. His mother often found him sitting quietly, tapping the cardboard with his fingers, eyes closed. She never disturbed him. She just smiled sadly and went back to her work. She knew he was dreaming, and dreams were all they had. One day, a rich businessman in the city was throwing a big party at his mansion. It was his daughter's birthday. The well-known families were invited. The decorations were grand, the food was fancy, and the guests wore expensive clothes. There was laughter, music, and cameras flashing. In one corner of the giant hall stood a beautiful grand piano, shining under the lights. The boy had been hired by a catering worker who often gave small jobs to poor kids. His task was simple: carry water bottles to the tables, clean empty plates, and stay out of trouble. He wore a plain white shirt and black pants that didn't fit quite right. But he was happy, not because of the food or the crowd, but because of the piano. He couldn't take his eyes off it, the way it stood there, silent and proud, almost, like it was waiting for someone to bring it to life. He finished his work quickly and moved closer, careful not to draw attention. Slowly, step by step, he walked up to it. His heart was beating fast. He had never been this close to a real piano before. He stretched his hand, just wanting to feel the keys. But just as his fingers touched one of the keys, a voice called out, "Hey, what do you think you're doing?" He froze. A group of well-dressed boys and girls around his age were looking at him with mocking smiles. "Don't touch that, poor boy," one of them laughed. "That piano costs more than your house." The boy quickly stepped back, his face turned red. A few adults nearby heard the laughter and glanced over. Some chuckled, others just shook their heads and looked away. The boy stood there, not knowing where to go. His hand was still in the air, as if frozen. One of the girls whispered to another, "Maybe he thinks he can play like the people on the internet." They all laughed again. But one boy stepped forward and said loudly, "Why don't you show us what you got then? Play something. Come on, genius." The poor boy looked at the piano, and then back at them, and slowly he walked forward again. The boy could feel every eye in the room watching him. His hands were shaking a little, but something inside him told him not to walk away. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was years of dreaming. Or maybe it was because he had imagined this moment too many times to let it slip. He took a slow breath and stepped closer to the piano. The kids who had mocked him were still standing nearby. Some had their phones out now, ready to record and laugh later. A few adults had also noticed and were watching from a distance, amused and curious. The boy didn't care anymore. He didn't come here to prove anything, just wanted to touch the piano again, to play, even if just for a moment. He pulled the bench out and sat down. His feet didn't touch the floor completely. He looked at the keys. They were so white, so perfect. It's much different from the ones he drew on cardboard at home. He lifted his hands and hovered over them, closing his eyes for a second in his mind. He was back in the library, watching a video of someone playing a soft tune. He had watched that video so many times, he remembered every movement, Every pause, every note, he took another deep breath, and then started. The first few notes were soft, almost uncertain. But then his fingers began to move with confidence, his left hand, then right, slow and steady. A beautiful melody filled the air. The noisy room slowly began to quiet down. Laughter stopped. Conversations paused. Even the servers carrying trays stopped in their tracks. The music was calm and deep. It wasn't loud or fancy, but it had something that reached into the heart. No one expected it. The boy wasn't playing from sheet music. He wasn't even trained. But what he played was full of emotion. Every note felt like it had a story. The rich kids who were laughing earlier now stared in disbelief. One of them slowly lowered his phone, forgetting to record. Some guests walked closer to the piano, curious. A few others nodded to the tune, swaying gently to the rhythm. The boy kept his eyes on the keys. He didn't look up. He didn't smile. He just kept playing, as if he had been doing it all his life. The song wasn't perfect. A few notes were slightly off, but nobody noticed. Or maybe they just didn't care, because what they were hearing wasn't just music, it was honesty, passion, and raw talent. At the back of the room, a man in a suit stood with a thoughtful expression. He had been busy talking to guests earlier, but now he was completely focused on the boy. He was the owner of the house. The man who had hired the boy to help serve at the party, he didn't say anything. He just watched. The boy finished the last note gently, letting it hang in the air. For a moment, there was silence. Then the sound of clapping began, soft at first, then louder. Some people even whistled. A few guests were smiling wide, surprised by what they had just witnessed. The same boy they almost ignored minutes ago had just filled the room with something unforgettable. The boy looked up, confused. He had expected more laughter, more jokes. Instead, he saw faces filled with shock, joy, and even a little respect. He stood up slowly, unsure what to do next. Someone whispered, "Who taught him that?" Another said, "Did you see his hands? That's natural talent." The man in the suit finally stepped forward, eyes fixed on the boy. But before he could say anything, one of the rich boys who had mocked him walked up and said, this time in a quiet voice, "Where did you learn that?" Boy looked at him, then glanced at the piano, then simply replied, "I watched, ... and I practiced in my head." The room stayed quiet for a few more seconds. People didn't know what to say. Some were still trying to understand what had just happened. A boy in simple clothes, working at the party as a helper, had just played the piano like someone trained for years. No one had seen it coming. The rich kids who were laughing earlier didn't look so confident now. One of them tried to smile and act like it was no big deal, but his voice had no strength when he said, "You just got lucky." No one paid him any attention. The man in the suit, the owner of the house, finally walked closer. He was tall, serious, and always busy. Most people feared him a little because of his position and money, but now he looked straight at the boy with interest, not anger. "What's your name?" he asked. The boy hesitated before answering. "I'm just one of the workers, sir. I was helping with the water. I didn't ask what you do." "I asked your name," the man said again, softer this time. The boy spoke his name quietly. The man nodded. "Where did you learn to play like that?" The boy looked down, a little nervous. "I watched videos at the library. I don't have a real piano, so I made one from cardboard. I just practice in my head." Whispers spread through the crowd. Some people looked at each other in disbelief. One woman even covered her mouth, shocked. A few guests started clapping again, this time not for the music, but for the boy's story. The man raised his hand, and the room quieted again. He looked around and said, "This boy just reminded us all of something we forget. Real talent has nothing to do with money or clothes." The guests nodded. Some of them looked ashamed for how they had treated him earlier. One woman walked up to the boy and said kindly, "You have a gift. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." The boy didn't know how to respond. He wasn't used to praise. Most days, people didn't even see him, let alone talk to him like this. But in that moment, he felt seen. He felt like someone who mattered. One of the music teachers at the party came forward too. He had been standing quietly at the back, watching everything. He spoke in a calm voice. That piece you played, it's not easy. You didn't just memorize it. You understood it. I've taught piano for 20 years, and I can tell when someone is special. The boy didn't say anything. He just nodded, holding back his emotions. The teacher turned to the man in the suit. With your permission, I'd like to give him free lessons. I don't want money. I just want to help him grow. The man nodded without hesitation. Not only that, he said, I want him to have a real piano, not cardboard, a proper one. It's delivered to his home. The crowd clapped again, this time louder. People began taking pictures, but not to mock him now. It was to remember the moment something truly special had happened. The boy's eyes filled with tears. Not because of the gift, but because for the first time in his life, someone believed in him, someone powerful, someone important. He looked at the piano one more time. It wasn't just an instrument anymore. It was a key to a new life, to a new future, to something he never thought possible. And deep inside, the boy knew this was just the beginning. The boy didn't sleep much that night. Even when he closed his eyes, his heart kept playing the melody again and again. He couldn't believe what had happened. People clapped for him. The man in the suit promised him a real piano. And a teacher offered free lessons. It felt like a dream he didn't want to wake up from. When he got home that night, his mother was waiting. She was worried because he was late, but when she saw his face, she knew something was different. What happened? She asked, gently brushing his hair back. He looked at her, his eyes shining. I played the piano. She stared at him. Oh, you played at the party? He nodded and told her everything, the mocking. The moment he sat down, the silence, the applause, the teacher, the gift. As he spoke, her eyes filled with tears. She covered her mouth with her hands, trying not to cry. She knew how much he loved music, how hard he had worked just to pretend on cardboard keys. I'm proud of you, she whispered, hugging him tightly. So proud. The next day, things began to change. True to his word, the man from the mansion sent a van to their small home. Inside was a real piano, polished and perfect. It barely fit through the front door. Neighbors came out to watch. Some smiled, some looked confused. A few even clapped. No one had ever seen something so beautiful. Arrived in their street before, the boy couldn't stop staring at the piano. He walked around it, touched the keys softly, as if it might disappear if he pressed too hard. It wasn't a dream. It was real. It was his. Soon after, the music teacher came by with a bag of books and a kind smile. He looked around the small room, saw the worn-out furniture and thin curtains, and then looked at the piano again. Sometimes, he said, music chooses people, not the other way around. He sat next to the boy and began the first lesson. Slowly, patiently, showing him how to hold his hands properly, how to read simple notes, how to control pressure. The boy listened carefully. Every word, every movement. He took in like a sponge. Week after week, the teacher returned. Each time, the boy got better. He'd practiced every day before school, after school, even when his fingers hurt. His mother often watched from the kitchen, smiling quietly. Sometimes, she wiped away a tear, not of sadness, but of joy. The man from the mansion also came once, just to check in. He didn't say much, but he watched the boy play. Afterward, he said, "You remind me of someone I used to be. Hungry, focused, brave." He gave the boy a gentle pat on the back and left. Soon, word started to spread in the town. The poor boy who played at the party, the one with the gift. A few reporters visited, asking questions. A small local news channel even did a story on him. They showed his cardboard piano, then his new one. They showed his teacher and his mother. People started recognizing him on the street, but the boy stayed the same. Quiet, humble, focused. He didn't play for attention. He didn't play for praise. He played because it made him feel alive. Every key, every sound told a part of his story. A story of dreams, struggle, and heart. One evening, after a long practice session, he looked out the window. The sun was setting, painting the sky in soft colors. He rested his hand on the piano and smiled. He knew he was still at the beginning, but now, for the first time, he believed in the road ahead, and more importantly, he believed in himself. The days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months. Every day after school, the boy would sit at the piano as if the rest of the world didn't exist. His fingers had become stronger. His timing had improved. He no longer had to watch videos just to learn a song. Now he could read notes and even create small tunes of his own. His teacher often sat silently while the boy played. Sometimes he would nod slowly. Sometimes he would smile and say, "You're growing faster than I expected." And sometimes he didn't say anything at all. He just listened. At school, things were changing too. A few kids who had once ignored him now came to him with questions. "Can you teach me piano? Or was that really you on TV?" Some were curious, or just surprised. A few even became his friends, but the boy didn't let it get to his head. He still helped his mother with the market stall. He still walked to the library. And he still practiced on cold mornings and quiet nights when others were asleep. He wasn't chasing fame. He just wanted to be better than he was yesterday. One day, his teacher brought him a small envelope. "There's a city music contest next month," the teacher said. "I think you should try." The boy looked at the paper inside. It had big words he didn't fully understand, but one word stood out. Competition. He paused. "Do you think I'm ready?" "Do," the teacher said. "But the question is do. You." The boy thought for a moment, then nodded. "Yes." For the next few weeks, he practiced harder than ever. The song he chose was not easy. It was slow in some parts, fast in others, and full of emotion. It reminded him of his journey, though. Silence, the struggle, the small moments of hope. He played it again and again until he could do it with his eyes closed. When the day of the contest came, he and his mother took a long bus ride to the city. She had saved money for his clean shirt and new shoes. As they reached the venue, his hands began to sweat. The building was big. The stage was even bigger. There were many other children there, all dressed in neat clothes, holding music sheets. Some with their own teachers standing beside them. The boy felt small again. He looked around and thought, maybe I don't belong here. But then his mother gently touched his shoulder and said, "You didn't come this far just to be scared. Play like you always do from the heart." When his name was called, he walked slowly to the stage. The lights were bright. The piano stood in the center, quiet and waiting. He sat down, closed his eyes for a moment, and remembered the first time he had touched a piano at that rich man's party. Then he began to play. The hall went silent. His fingers moved across the keys, telling a story without words. The music rose and fell like waves, soft moments, strong moments, each note full of feeling. He didn't think about the judges, didn't think about the crowd. He only thought about the song and how it made him feel alive. When he finished, there was a pause, then clapping, loud and real. Backstage, his mother hugged him tight. The teacher gave a proud nod. He didn't care if he won. What mattered was that he played, and he played with everything he had. But deep inside, he had a feeling this wasn't the end. Something bigger was waiting. They sat in the audience, waiting for the results. The boy looked around the big hall, still feeling the echo of his performance in his heart. His hands had finally stopped shaking. His mother was holding his hand tightly, smiling even though her eyes were a little wet. She didn't care about the prize. For her, he had already won. There were many talented kids in the competition. Some had been learning since they were 5. Some had private teachers, grand pianos at home, and years of stage experience. The boy knew that. But still, something deep inside told him that his music had reached people's hearts. And maybe that mattered more than anything. After a short break, the announcer walked back on stage with a sheet of paper. The room fell silent. In third place, the announcer read. Polite claps followed as a boy walked up to collect his prize. In second place, More claps as another girl smiled and accepted her trophy. And now, the announcer paused. Looking at the paper, the first prize goes to a young boy who surprised all our judges. He has no formal training, but his performance was filled with raw emotion and beautiful control. People sat up straighter. The winner is... The boy felt his heart stop. Double quotes. ... the boy from District 12, before the announcer could finish. The boy's mother gasped and covered her mouth. People clapped loudly and some stood. The boy looked around, shocked. He couldn't believe it. He had won. He walked slowly to the stage, like in a dream. The announcer shook his hand and gave him a small golden trophy in an envelope. "Shh, you earned it," the announcer said with a warm smile. The boy didn't say much. He just smiled, bowed slightly, and looked at the crowd with thankful eyes. The judges were nodding. A few guests wiped their eyes. Backstage, reporters waited with cameras and questions. "Where did you learn to play? Do you come from?" "A musical family." "What's next for you?" He answered simply and honestly. "I practiced on a cardboard piano. I learned by watching videos at the library. And I just love music." One of the reporters smiled and said, "Well, the world is going to hear more from you." And it did. Over the next few weeks, the story spread everywhere. It was on the local news, then national TV, and finally across the internet. People from different cities, even other countries, watched the clip of the boy playing in the contest. Comments poured in. People called him a miracle, a natural talent, a boy with a gift. Offers began to come. Music schools, sponsors, even producers reached out. They wanted to help. They wanted to train him, give him more tools to grow. But the boy and his mother stayed calm. They chose only what felt right. He kept learning with his same teacher. He still helped his mother at the stall. And he still spent quiet evenings at the piano, playing not for the cameras, but for the joy of it. One afternoon, the man from the mansion visited again. He'd watched the contest on television, sat with the boy and said, "I knew there was something special in you that day. But what you've done now is more than special, something the world needed to see." The boy smiled. "Thank you for letting me touch your piano that day." The man laughed gently. "No, thank you for touching all of our hearts." The boy looked down at his fingers, the same fingers that once tapped on cardboard keys. Now, those fingers were writing a new future, not just for him, but for others like him, who dared to dream beyond what they had. And the journey was not over yet. Time moved forward. But the memory of that piano, that party, and that one brave moment stayed with the boy forever. He often thought back to the day when he first touched the keys, scared, nervous, not knowing what would happen. It was strange how just a few seconds had changed everything now. Life was very different. He was invited to music events across the country. He performed at schools, community centers, and sometimes even on big stages where thousands of people listened. But no matter how grand the place was, he always played with the same heart, the same feeling he had when he sat at his cardboard piano in that tiny room at home. He never forgot where he came from. He still lived in the same neighborhood, the same small house. His mother didn't let anyone treat them like they were above others now. "Stay humble," she often said. "That kindness and hard work brought you here. Don't let pride take it away." One day something special happened. The same man who had once hired him to serve water at the party invited him again. But this time, not as a helper. This time, as a guest performer. The boy was quiet for a moment when he heard the invitation. "Are you sure?" he asked. The man smiled. "That piano still remembers you. It's waiting." The boy arrived at the mansion wearing a simple, clean suit. People turned their heads as he entered. Some of the same guests from that day were present again. They looked at him differently now, not with judgment, but with respect. Some even walked up to say hello and shake his hand. The hall was decorated beautifully, just like before. Lights sparkled, music played softly in the background, and in one corner stood that same grand piano. The boy walked toward it slowly. It felt like meeting an old friend. He sat down. For a moment, he rested his fingers on the keys, but didn't press them yet. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath, and then he began to play. This time, the music was even more beautiful. It had more layers, more emotion. It was a song he had written himself, a mix of all the feelings he had gone through: the fear, the struggle, the hope, and the joy. As the notes filled the room, people stopped talking. Their eyes followed every move of his hands. Some smiled, some felt tears in their eyes. It was more than just a performance. It was a journey, a reminder of how far a person can go with belief and courage. When he finished, the room exploded. In applause, not the polite kind, but the kind that comes from deep inside when something truly touches your soul. The boy stood up, bowed gently, and then looked at the crowd. He picked up the mic and said just one sentence: "Thank you for laughing that day. It gave me the reason to become better." The room went silent again, but this time, not because of judgment, because of respect. After that night, the boy started a small program in his neighborhood. He used part of his prize money to buy secondhand keyboards and set up music lessons for kids who had dreams like he once did. His dream had come true, and now he wanted to help others dream too. He became more than just a boy who played piano. He became a symbol of hope for many, proof that talent can come from anywhere, even the most unlikely places. Years later, when people talked about him, they didn't remember him as a poor boy. They remembered him as the boy who touched a piano and touched the world.